Hello everyone. This video is about Linux systems for elderly people. And in this video I will show you a couple of good Linux systems that are used and popular amongst elderly senior users. And I will explain what we found in a little online research that we made and some interviews and our family experience as well. Which are the best systems and what do elderly people use and what supports their needs best. So this is what we're gonna do. I will launch some Linux systems on this machine, so you will physically see some systems running here. And before I do that, I would like to explain some background information about this. So first of all, why do we think that senior people would want to use Linux systems at all? And based on my experience, the key point is that they have some confusion with Windows systems. Windows is very popular and many people use XP, some people use Windows 7 or 8 already. I mean senior people. When I mean users, it's always the elderly people now in this video. And I made some research online, and what I found is that people are now a little bit confused or scared or afraid, name it the way you want, about the deadline that Microsoft has given for the Windows 10 upgrade. Because the 10 upgrade is for free, but people don't know what's going to happen after. And if you are an old user, your needs are very limited, and then you don't know, what's going to be the pricing structure and the feature coming in future releases. Also, I found that the Windows 10 is full of new and really fancy, flashy functionality that elderly people don't use, and it's demanding for them to learn those things. So what makes people think of a change is basically the upgrade difficulty, some confusion around the pricing, plus another very practical condition would be that some people are still using really old hardware. We also had some members in the family who use computers from 2003, which is like 13 years old now, and they use the original XP, Windows XP that came with that computer. And old people don't like the change. If you are a senior person yourself, maybe in your 60s or even 70s, then you know that it's really not really urgent for you anytime to upgrade your systems. You like it as it is and you want it to be stable and always available for you, and that's it. So what I found is that Windows 10 has caused a little bit of confusion, and especially if you have to do a hardware upgrade, then you will need to buy new Windows licenses. You need a Windows 7 or Windows 8 license to upgrade to Windows 10. And very often people find it just too expensive when they are looking at alternatives. So maybe you are here because of that. Maybe you want to install it for yourself or somebody in the family. So I will help you understand what are the needs of senior people and what would be the best systems, Linux systems, that we can use a Windows 10 replacement to fulfill those specific needs that are in this document. So what we have here on the screen is a blog post that we released. Actually, I released it on my blog like a couple of days ago, and it received a lot of attention immediately online. So that's why I thought that I will make a video out of this, because I think this topic is interesting. So what are the needs of elderly people? So let's start with this one. So what we found is that people in the family and in online communities, they want to use email functionality first of all, and senior people don't write so many emails. They more like read emails, and basically they keep in touch with family and some friends as well, and also they do some official administrative tasks with the government or taxation. So this happens, and senior people actually use that and use email for administrative reasons as well. Browsing. Old people browse the internet. The strange thing is, the different habits are, that senior people tend to use less websites. So they have a couple of favorite websites for news and social media, social networks, And what they need is a stable browser for those couple of websites that they use. Okay, another thing that they do is that they check out Facebook. So on Facebook, they keep in touch with friends, they send greetings and watch what the people are doing. So they are really, some of them are heavy users of Facebook. Another important point is the bank account management. So they log into the bank in a browser and check the balance. I saw that transactions are mainly done in the bank physically or on the phone, not online yet, but this may change. And they copy pictures from phones and camera to the computer. So it's important for them to find a way to organize their files and pictures in a way that they can keep track of those. They make Skype calls, which I think is absolutely normal and understandable, so that they can keep in touch with family. And some advanced users use spreadsheets. So like people, like my grandma always had a notebook where she put her expenses, like a notebook like this one here. So she had something like this. And some members of our family also have spreadsheets on the computer that they use for these purposes. So these are the basic needs, right? It's not so much, right? Any basic system can fulfill this. So like the old Windows 10 systems are absolutely okay for these activities. So there are a couple of other findings. When we talk to senior people about the computers or how they are using computers, we need to keep in mind a few things. First thing is that they usually don't use the concept of applications. And when I say this, this is mainly true for people in their 70s. So the one younger generation in their 60s, they are more flexible, they are more comfortable using computers. But people in their 70s, they are quite kind of rigid and they learn slower, and it takes a lot of effort from their side to repeat also simple tasks. So my father-in-law, for example, who is 74, he takes notes of every single step, and then he can repeat those steps from his little green notebook. And then he's okay. So what we found was that applications is a too generic concept, and it's better to talk about functionality instead of applications. So for example, in the browser, we don't talk about the browser, we talk about a news page, we talk about Facebook, we talk about an internet bank, and senior people say that I want this functionality. So I want to have news, weather forecast, I want to have view my bank account, and I want to connect to Facebook. So this is the functionality that I need. And they won't tell you that, okay, I need a browser to do all this, because they are, it's not in their vocabulary or dictionary to use the browser term for all these activities, which is, I think, absolutely normal user behavior. So this is one thing that we found. Another challenging area for senior people is file management. It's really hard. It takes a lot of effort and time to get used to the idea of files and folders. So I found that the term folder is much better than the term dictionary, because you can imagine a folder of files also in the real world. So folder works okay, but the thing is that I found that senior people don't find it so much natural to use files. So instead of working with files, we say that we are working with pictures, we are working with videos, and we are working with documents like text or PDF or a spreadsheet. And as we talk about this, we realize that we need a system that has dedicated place for different kind of files. So the system that has a dedicated place for pictures and documents is much better for senior people than a system that doesn't have it, that just has a generic file management functionality. So that's why Linux systems that have a folder for pictures and documents was ranked higher on our blog post than the ones that don't have this functionality. Okay, another interesting point is to be really generic, what I found was that any system that looks like Windows XP is good. And so senior people like the ones that are so simple that really, would remind you of Windows XP. That's a good call. There's a high chance that people will like it. And anything that is more complicated than that, like the new Windows 8 user interface or the Windows 10 UI, or even in Linux, the new Gnome UI, for example, or Unity in Ubuntu, those are not so useful. So let's move on and see what are the key differences here. We have a table. I think I would keep that table for later because this is the final result and the final comparison, so maybe I will do that later. And let me tell you which are those Linux systems that we will launch in this video. And this is a shortcut, so I will highlight it immediately here. And let me have a few words about these. So these are what you see here. These are called Linux distributions. So what is a Linux distribution? So what is Linux anyway? So Linux is an operating system. It's an alternative of Windows or OS X on the Mac. And its main task is, to give you a working environment on a computer. And I'm really trying to talk here high-level terms and absolutely not a technical definition. It's more like, what the stuff is used for. So an operating system is something, that you can start up with your computer and it will give you a framework or some environment to work in. So it will give you a desktop, it will give you some applications, it will give you files and place for pictures, documents, and the place where you can install new applications for new functionalities. So you can install Skype, for example, in your operating system and run it. So Linux is an operating system for PCs. So that means that the computers that I sold in general stores and the computers that can run Windows, they can usually run Linux as well. And distributions are just different flavors. So Linux has a core, it shares some technical components, and the different flavors are built on the same core, but they are specialized and optimized for different purposes. So there are some Linux distributions that are for generic purposes, like to replace Windows, for example. There are some other distributions that are optimized for speed, so they are very lightweight, for example. Or there are some that are optimized for security or development, and so on. And the ones that are listed here, these are, let's go one by one. Puppy Linux is quite an old distribution. The name Puppy suggests that it's meant to be really simple, sort of funny, friendly, and it was really praised by internet users. So when I made the research online, I saw that old people really like using Puppy Linux. But it was a few years back, but anyway, it was very popular in the senior community. Debian is another distribution. It's a generic distribution. It's really robust and absolutely stable. It's one of the big names, and it's really full-featured as well. Ubuntu is based on Debian, and it's a very popular and fast-growing community and Linux distribution. It is used by almost everybody. So I think right now it is the best system to replace Windows in the business environment, in a technical environment, for senior people. We will see. I will launch it and we will have a look. I think if you are flexible, it's a good choice. If you want to have something more classical, traditional, then maybe I will suggest some other ones. Lubuntu is the light version of Ubuntu, which means that it will run on older hardware as well. So not so powerful hardware. And LinuxMint is based on Ubuntu, and its sole purpose was to be very simple, elegant, and comfortable, and give you a familiar environment. So LinuxMint, also in the website they say that this is the Linux distribution that's easier for Windows user to learn and use. So finally, we have actually LinuxMint was the final winner of our comparison, so that's our number one proposition for senior user, and I will launch it and show it to you why we mean this. So these are distributions, and you need to know that these distributions work very similarly very often, and there's another dimension or consideration when we are using Linux, and that's called the desktop environment. And the desktop environment is just the look and feel of your Linux distribution. So I think Puppy Linux and Ubuntu, Lubuntu, and LinuxMint have some default desktop environments. So the default look and feel when you install these distributions, the look and feel that you have after the installation out of the box, it has a purpose. So it's usually has a shared purpose with the entire distribution, and is designed to give you the user experience as a whole. So in that sense, we will assess Puppy, Ubuntu, Lubuntu, and LinuxMint with the default desktop environment. In Debian is more generic, a more general purpose, I would say. So with Debian, we will have a look at various different desktop environments, and I will give you some suggestions which ones we think are better than the others for senior people. So the desktop environments we will try, the first one is Gnome. I know it's maybe a lot of new terms, but don't worry. So Gnome is one of the main ones, main desktop environments in the Linux world. KDE is another one. So these are Gnome and KDE are the big names. And Gnome is right now at version 3, which means that there is a new Gnome, and that new Gnome it really looks like Windows a little bit. It's flashy. It also reminds me of OS X, and so it's really up to date, very trendy, and that's why if you look at the second one, some people thought that they want to keep the old look and feel of Gnome. So instead of 3, you have 2 here. It's called Mate, and Mate is basically based on the previous version. It looks more traditional. We will have a look at it. Cinnamon is stylish, and it was developed for LinuxMint. It also comes from Gnome, so it has basically the same idea. KDE is another big one, and it's really simple and looks like XP. So I will show them the KDE as well. Unity is part of Ubuntu. LXDE and XFCE, the last two ones, these are lightweight distributions. So these are the most likely ones that will run on old systems. Okay, so we have come to the point when I will launch Linux distributions, and you can have a look at them. So the first one on the blog post is Puppy Linux, and I don't want to launch Puppy Linux because I found it so out of place that basically I don't even want to launch it. But if you look at it, it was a big mess to install. I had to do a lot of manual configuration, and the issue was configuration is fine, but if you have to do technical decisions in the configuration and use technical terms, I think that's not for new users, it's not for senior people. And anyway, the whole thing is not very well organized, and I was even going back to the website checking if they are still maintaining this Puppy Linux distribution at all, because it feels like I don't know, 10-15 years before today. So instead of launching Puppy Linux, let's go to my machine library and let's start with the winner. So LinuxMint is the winner, and let me start Linux here. I will disappear, so you will not see me here, but that's fine. So we are booting the system. What you will see here is a fully functional Linux operating system running in something that's called a virtual machine. But don't worry about this. What you see now, you will see the same thing on a dedicated desktop machine on your PC at home. You will have this experience that you see on the screen. So this is LinuxMint, and let me highlight a few considerations. So first of all, we had a look at the menu, and the menu of any system is very important because that's where you find applications for your activities. And what we found is that senior people, old people like structure, like a tree structure, where the structure is self-explanatory, is easy to follow. So you have accessories here, graphics, internet, and if you look at the internet menu, for example, then you have a browser, and if you look down here, right here, there's nothing here, but as I hover over the menu items, you see that there is a description in human understandable language. So this thing is, what is this? This is a Firefox web browser, browse the World Wide Web. So it says what it does. Again, email, send and receive mail. So if you're looking for something, there's a good chance that you will find it. So if you say that I want to do this, so you know what you want to do, then you can probably look at the description and find the right application to do what you want, right? So I think this is really helpful. Let's have a look at the Office applications as well. So you have, this is Excel or similar to Excel, and it says perform calculations, analyze information in spreadsheets. Then you have Draw, it's for flowcharts, logos, and so on. Impress for slideshows, Math for math, scientific formulas, and Writer is for text and graphic letters and so on. So it is important to tell you now that as we install LinuxMint, all this is included in the setup package. So what you see here is just right after the first and initial setup of the system. Everything is included, and Java is also included. So if I launch the web browser, it already has a Java plugin, and that is we found that is important because a lot of banks still use a Java-based system, a Java-based e-banking system. So it's important that we have Java as well installed. So this is the browser. It's Mozilla Firefox. It really looks like any other browser. And let me show you just how Google looks like. Okay, it's gonna be in Hungarian because I'm sitting right now in Hungary, but I can change this to English so that you can see that you have access to the same internet basically that you would see on some other systems. So it's the same internet as in Windows. All right, so this is the menu. You can change the settings, you can use a lot of stuff. Let me show you the files. So you can launch files from here as well. You can launch files from here. So this is your home folder. So this is my user, this is my username. Don't ask me why. And this is my home folder. And as you see, I have a dedicated place for documents, for music, for pictures, videos, downloads, and so on. So if I download something, it's going to appear in my downloads folder. And another important point is to show you how updates work, because with senior people that was the most common complaint, that Windows is taking away the control from people when they're using the computer. So during startup and shutdown, and even between the two, the control is taken by the update process, and you see that you have to wait for all those updates, you know that, when Windows starts or shuts down. So in here, there is an update functionality in Linux as well. So there's an update center. You don't need to do anything manually. And there's a little icon, you click that icon, and you get a list of updates, and then you just click install updates. The good news is that you can do this whenever you like to do this. So if you are, if you are a senior person and you don't feel comfortable to do this, you can wait with that, and somebody in the family or some friend will come over and run that for you. And if you are confident enough, you just click this button and the installation will run. But there will not be any updates running without your approval, or they will not take the control from you. And most importantly, this thing will not ask you questions that you don't understand. Okay, so whatever else is important, I think what else is important is the internet connectivity and the language. So immediately as you are installing this system, there is internet connectivity from the first moment. So also during the installation, you will get a really up-to-date and fresh version of everything that is in the package, because it automatically connects to the internet. And it's very easy to change language. Actually, the setup screen starts with the language selection, and you can change the language of the entire system anytime. And I've done this in Windows, for people who are not English, so English is not their first language. For those people, it's really important to change the language. And it's Windows. In Windows, it's not so easy. In Linux, it's just absolutely totally simple. So I can even show that to you, that I come to the setup. These are the settings, and you go to languages, and you see this is where you can change the language. You restart the machine, it's going to be in a different language. Okay. So I think I'm gonna just close this, shut down, close this machine, and I will start another one and see what's going on. So hi, I'm back. And which one should be in the next one? Okay, let's see Ubuntu and Lubuntu, and then we go to Debian and change the desktop environments, and I will show you a couple of different desktop environments too. So let's go for Ubuntu. So as I said, Ubuntu is very popular. I have seen Ubuntu in the office many times. So people use Ubuntu for everyday work in professional environments. They use that for presentations, emails, and technical development as well. And that's probably because Ubuntu is very careful, to provide as much functionality as possible to make everybody happy. And therefore there are a lot of packages, there are a lot of users, there's a very active community, and there are a lot of there are forums where we can fix your issues in case you have any issues. So this is the Ubuntu desktop. So as you see, there are nice big icons. Actually, you can change the size of the icons in various different distributions, so it's not an issue to customize Linux at all. But I think it's also good to look at what's coming in the box, because usually senior people will not mess around with the size of the panel, because then first of all they need to learn that this is called a panel, and then you have to go to the panel settings and set the size. Okay, so let's go for the files. So this is the file manager in Ubuntu, and it is also very advanced. So it has documents, downloads, pictures, everything that is needed by people to get a structure on the computer. So this is absolutely great. These buttons are on the left side, but you can of course configure them to be on the right side, but for now they are on the left, and this is the default. By default you have Office documents. So let me open up the this is, by the way, a free Office distribution, so you can install the same free Office on Windows as well and on the Mac. So if I open up an Office document, so this is like Excel, and it's totally like Excel. And let me close this. The key point that I don't like about Ubuntu is its menu. And when I say I don't like it, it means that I wouldn't recommend that for senior users. So why is that? Because Ubuntu assumes that you want to search. Because you see there is a search bar here, and they ask you to search for something. So that assumes that you know what you're looking for. And in case of the elderly user scenario, there should be a menu to choose from, not some means to find certain stuff, because that would require that you know exactly how this stuff works. And so if you don't want to search, then you go to these small icons, which I believe are too small. And I mean, for senior users, And then you can here click on this C75 more results, and then you get a list of installed applications on this machine. And then you see the granularity is different. So there are some really low level, like Bluetooth settings is a low level stuff, and a web browser is a pretty big one, and they are all represented on the same level. And I think this would require a lot of learning from somebody, to use. Of course, I'm sure there are some means to change this to a tree structure or whatever, but as it is right now, I think it's too fancy for people in their 70s and beyond. Okay, so this is Ubuntu, but I know people in their 60s who use Ubuntu and love it. And the good news is that I use this distribution, Ubuntu, on an old laptop that I have, and I didn't have any issues running Ubuntu on that machine. So let's shut this down, and let's go for the small brother, the light version of Ubuntu, which is called Lubuntu. So I'm starting Lubuntu, and it's a light version. So light Ubuntu means that the user interface is more simple, and it also means that some applications were removed from the default package. But if you look at it, it's still a full-featured option for elderly users. And the thing is that I have to change the resolution every time it boots up. I don't know why, but maybe it's just my thing. So now I will show you how to change the resolution. So in the preferences, you go to monitor settings, and we pick the settings for my monitor here, and we apply. So now this is the Lubuntu interface, and it has a well-structured menu with clear options. So for the internet, it has a browser by default. It doesn't have an email client by default. Or, okay, sorry, I take this back. It has an email client, but it's different from the ones that we've seen before, because they had a different client. It doesn't have the same Office package. So it doesn't have the free Office package that we have seen in Ubuntu. You can of course install it, but it's not part of the base package from a comparison perspective. Settings and everything else are very similar to Ubuntu. So there is a calculator, for example, like everywhere else. We can open up a file manager, and the file manager has music, pictures, everything else in place. It has a different look and feel, a more simple look and feel, but it also looks like Windows XP, because the menu bar is here at the bottom, and you have the clock here, and you have the keyboard settings, the language, the volume control, all this stuff. So it's a Windows-like system. It will run in old hardware as well. It's worth a try. It's absolutely a good option. Maybe you will have to add some stuff. You will have to add some features, some software to it. Okay, so let's log out. So this is Lubuntu. Sorry, I should have done the shutdown. So I shut down this computer, and let's start Debian now. And now, oops, just on the next screen, we will pick a desktop environment. So the thing is that you can install different desktop environments with any Linux distribution that you have. So you can do the same thing with Ubuntu or whatever. But so far, for the sake of simplicity, I have shown you the default desktop environment. But here, for Debian, I have installed many desktop environments, as you see here. So let's start with which one? Let's start with Gnome, because that's the first on our list. This is the latest Gnome environment. If you remember, this is the one where I said that this is maybe a little bit too advanced or too flashy, and let me show you right now why I said this. So the key difference between this Linux and Windows is that the application bar is on the top, not on the bottom. You can change this, you can change everything, but by default it looks like this. And then if you click activities, instead of a menu or a tree menu structure, you get this thing here. So there's a launch bar, Iceweasel is a browser. You know, the names and some applications are different. There is an Office component as well. And if you want to see the list of applications, you need to click this menu icon. And if you click this, then you will get a launch screen. So this is the launch screen that you have. And on this launch screen, you have to be able to find what you're looking for. Again, it's a search focused operation instead of a menu like sorry, I made too many typos here. So instead of a menu, I mean a structured menu, you get this search based menu that assumes that you know what you're looking for. I mean, of course you can learn this, but what I saw is that it's really demanding for senior people to remember so many options. And it's also really hard to take notes of this, like, you know, like, I don't know, you have to click the 4th icon in the 6th row. It wouldn't work, right? Okay, so this is Gnome. And I think it's better if we shut this down. And actually, sorry, I need to log off, not shut down. So I log out and change to another desktop environment. So this was the latest Gnome, and now we go for the previous Gnome version because that is still simple. So Gnome Classic. So let's see what Gnome Classic has to offer. It's starting up, and you see it's a bit different because the running applications will be shown here on the bottom, and the menu is on the top, and this is a structured menu. So that's a little bit better. And you have a very similar list of applications we had before in other distributions. So you have internet here, you have a browser, you have an email client, you have Office documents, you have the same Office package here. So if I start the spreadsheet application, then we will get the same spreadsheets. You see, this is exactly like Excel. The close button is here. The size of these icons and this text is maybe a bit too small, but on a different screen it will look different and the sizes will be different, so don't worry about that. It's just my computer, my specific case is like this, but I can change that if I would want to. And then let's check out the file manager as well. So the file manager for Gnome Classic has the folders, documents, music, and if you go to the home folder, everything is included. And as you see, this it's running here, so it indicates that the file manager is running. So I click this, it will be minimized, and then if I click it again, it will be shown again. So this is Gnome Classic for you. And let's go for the next option. I think we have seen Cinnamon already, because Cinnamon is part of LinuxMint, so I will not show it here. Instead, let's go for, oh, what have I done? Sorry, I have logged on to the same environment again, because yeah, I'm talking and typing at the same time, it won't work. So so what I was trying to explain is that we will skip Cinnamon and we will pick another one. I think KDE would be the next one, which is one of the big names. So it has a startup animation, which is a new feature. We haven't seen this before. It doesn't add any real value. It just has a different look and feel. And as it will start up, you will see that it looks like Windows XP because the menu is like the Windows menu. The only difference is, and actually this is something that I don't like about the KDE desktop, is you can search, so it also has a search-based functionality, which is good if you know what you're looking for. But the menu structure is not, not this laid out structure, but it's more like an iPhone or smartphone structure. So the stuff is scrolling, and it's not easy to keep track of where you are. I mean, you can see where you are in the tree here, but for senior people, I believe this is often just too much. Okay, so let's have a look at the file manager. You can increase the size of these icons, of course, so don't worry about that. But by default, it's like this, and it has some images, documents, audio files, you name it. Okay, so let's try and leave the system. So I'm logging out. I'll have to click this again. And now let's see the next one. So this was KDE, and I still need to show you the light ones and Mate, I think. Let's go for Mate then. Let's type my passwords and log on with a different desktop environment. So by the way, I installed these desktop environments during the installation procedure. You are supposed to pick one desktop environment, but the setup gives you the option to pick more than one. So I picked all of them, and now we are logging in and out to change between those. So in Mate, what we have applications. It's a nice menu. All the applications are listed here. You have places. Again, these are places in the file system, and the system, this is shutdown, log out, and so on. So the menu is on the top, and applications that run will be displayed here. And in terms of file management, you have dedicated folders as most of the time. So this is again another good option that has the functionality of that is required by senior people. So let's log out, and let's move on to the next ones. We have already seen one light system with Lubuntu. So I'm trying to pick another one, but I'm not sure which one is which one. So let's see, maybe I will start. No, okay, I picked the right one. So we have seen the other one in Lubuntu, and this one here is another light system. I like this one a lot. It's easy to read. It has a really nice menu, good structure, looks like XP, and it has Office documents, so you can also use the same things here. And let me show you the file manager. This is the file manager, and so it has documents, downloads, music, everything here. The only thing you need to do is to add these shortcuts to the side of the browser, because it's not included by default. So it's another sort of friendly looking distribution. You can move these things around, you can change that. So if I just click panel preferences, and then I uncheck lock panel, and now I can click here and move it to the bottom. It's not so easy, but I can do it. So okay, I can move this on to the bottom, and then it will more look like Windows. Then I can move it back, log back again. Oops, sorry. So I can move it back, and then I can close this. So I don't want you watch me do this, but anyway, I have accomplished this complex activity now. So I will log out again, and I think basically that's it. So we have seen all the different distributions and the different desktop environments. So let's close it for now, and let's draw the summary of this video. So the summary would be that we had a look at a couple of major Linux distributions. We both had lightweight, simple, and general purpose. And if I want to make the comparison, because we had made a comparison as well, and I promised to you that I will talk about this. So on the blog, there is a table. I'm scrolling up to the table, and we have compared LinuxMint, which was the winning distribution, to Windows 10. And we have found some really surprising facts about the two. So you can read it on the blog. So I don't want to read this. I don't want to read everything. I just want to highlight a few facts about this. So the key differences between Linux and Windows 10 and LinuxMint, and key benefits of Linux, were that Linux will not take the control from you during the upgrade. So you don't see a Windows update during startup or shutdown, which is a great benefit. So on the control side. On the hardware side, there are some Linux distributions like Lubuntu that will run on older hardware, which is also another good point. Security wise, both systems are secure. Windows, of course, has a lot more viruses, but I don't want to talk about this because it's been a topic for like 20 years, so I don't want to use this opportunity to explain this again. The other important security difference was that Linux asks for a password every time you want to, you want to make a change to the system. Windows, on the other hand, has this little window, because it's called Windows, so it has a window that has, do you allow to make this change or not? So there's a yes or no question. If you click yes, my experience is that senior people, they don't understand the question, they don't know what's going on, and they just click yes. And then they screw up the system. So it happened to me. It took me a couple of days to fix my father-in-law's computer, not once, not twice, because of this issue. If you have to enter a password, that's a different story. Okay, in terms of features, that was a big surprise to me that on Windows 10, the Edge browser didn't support plugins before. I think for a couple of days now, or maybe a week or so, they already support plugins, but before they didn't support plugins. So that means that you were not able to install Java in the Edge browser. And if you have some sites like your bank who uses Java, then you are not able to do e-banking on Edge because of Java. And LinuxMint just has this installed out of the box. So I would expect Windows to have all the features, and then it turns out that this is not the case. But I think this is changing, so don't worry about it too much. Office, same thing. You can use this even if you want to have a free Office, you can use the same package, both Windows and Linux. So it doesn't matter. And in terms of maintenance, I have some LinuxMint instances in the family, and in the last 2.5 months we had no issues, no phone calls whatsoever. With Windows 10, my father-in-law had a lot of trouble. I received like 2 or 3 phone calls every week, and finally he decided to use Windows 7 instead. So he had another hard drive, and he's still booting Windows 7 on that one because he cannot get used to Windows 10. So it was another interesting learning when it comes to senior people. And while Linux seems to be a better option for older users, is because of the mission and vision that is also highlighted here. I copied these from the websites. So LinuxMint is meant to be simple, easy to use, and comfortable, while Windows and Microsoft has a mission to support businesses and everybody who creates and want to go in a high-speed environment and shape the future. And I think that because of this, the priorities are different, and because of these different priorities, senior people may have some advantage with a slower, more stable system, like a simplified LinuxMint distribution. Pricing, Linux is free, it will remain free. Windows, the upgrade is free, what's coming in the future, we don't know. I mean, a lot of people are worried about this, especially old people. They don't know, how to calculate the cost, because older people, they are open to keep the same Windows version for like, I don't know, 10, 13 years, so on. And as I explained before, we have members in the family who've been using the same same Windows version for 13 years. So in this case, if you get a bill in next year or the year after for I don't know how many, like $50 or $30, maybe you don't want to pay for it. All right, so these were the concerns, and this was the comparison from the elderly user point of view. And we like Linux Mint a lot, so that was the first option on our list. Debian with different desktop environments is a good option. Lubuntu for older computers, and Ubuntu for more flexible, cool elderly users. So I hope you found this useful. Please subscribe to the channel if you liked it. Leave a comment, ask me anything. I'm happy to answer questions as well. And see you in the next video.